When I told them I got promoted to partner, my husband's father said, "Did you sleep your way to the top?" The champagne glass in my hand stopped halfway to my lips. I was standing in the private dining room of Mercato, an upscale Italian restaurant in downtown Chicago, surrounded by my husband's entire extended family celebrating what should have been the proudest moment of my career. The partnership announcement at Sterling & Associates had come through that morning at 9:15 a.m., making me the youngest equity partner in the firm's 63-year history at 34 years old. My husband David had insisted on organizing this dinner to share the news with his family, and I'd agreed despite my reservations because he seemed genuinely excited for me. Now his father, William Hartley, was staring at me from across the table with this smirk that made my skin crawl, waiting for my response to his question like he'd just made a clever joke instead of publicly accusing me of prostituting myself for professional advancement. The silence in the room pressed against my ears. David's mother, Patricia, had frozen with her fork suspended over her salad. David's sister, Caroline, was recording on her phone like this was entertainment. And David, my husband of 6 years, was looking down at his plate like the pattern on the china had suddenly become fascinating. I'd been working at Sterling & Associates for 9 years when the partnership decision came through, starting as a first-year associate straight out of Northwestern Law School, where I'd graduated second in my class. The firm specialized in corporate law and mergers and acquisitions, representing Fortune 500 companies through complex transactions worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I'd built my reputation by working 80-hour weeks, mastering arcane securities regulations, and developing expertise in cross-border deals that most attorneys avoided because of their complexity. My billable hours consistently exceeded 2,400 annually, well above the firm's requirement of 2,000. My client satisfaction scores were the highest in my department. I'd brought in $4.3 million in new business over the past 3 years through networking and relationship building. The partnership vote had been unanimous among the existing partners, something that rarely happened. Managing partner Richard Kowalski had called me into his office that morning and told me the decision was one of the easiest the partnership committee had ever made. He'd specifically mentioned my exceptional legal mind and unimpeachable professional ethics. Now William Hartley was suggesting none of that mattered because surely a woman couldn't achieve success through actual competence. I set my champagne glass down carefully on the white tablecloth, aware that everyone was watching me, measuring my reaction. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" My voice came out steadier than I felt, which was good because my hands had started shaking under the table. William leaned back in his chair, that smirk widening. "Come on, sweetheart, we're all adults here. A young woman making partner that quickly? At a firm full of men? We know how the world really works." He said it like he was letting me in on a secret, like we were all supposed to nod knowingly and laugh together. Patricia made this little sound, not quite agreement but not quite objection either, and reached for her wine glass. Caroline was definitely still recording, her phone angled to capture my face. I looked at David, waiting for him to say something, to defend me, to tell his father that his comment was completely out of line. David cleared his throat. "Dad, that's not really appropriate." His voice was barely above a whisper, and he still wasn't looking at me. That was it. That was his defense of my 9-year career and professional accomplishments. Not really appropriate, like his father had made a mildly off-color joke instead of publicly calling me a prostitute. William waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Sterling & Associates is an old boys club. Always has been. The only way a woman breaks through that ceiling is by offering something the old boys want." He actually winked at me. Winked. "No shame in it, darling. You played the game smart." Caroline laughed, this sharp little bark of amusement. "Oh my God, Dad, you can't just say that out loud." But she was laughing, not defending me. Patricia set her wine glass down and gave me this pitying look. "William does have a point, dear. It's unusual for someone so young to make partner, especially a woman. People are going to talk. You must have known that when you accepted the position." She said it like she was trying to be helpful, warning me about the gossip I'd face, completely oblivious to the fact that she and her husband were the ones creating the gossip. I felt something cold settle in my chest, a clarity that cut through the shock and humiliation. These people didn't respect me. They'd never respected me. Every family dinner for the past 6 years, every holiday gathering, every celebration, they'd treated my career like a cute hobby while elevating David's work as a financial analyst, like he was curing cancer. I'd convinced myself they were just old-fashioned, that they'd come around once they saw my success. I'd been wrong. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I'm leaving." David finally looked at me, confusion crossing his face. "What? Why? We haven't even ordered yet." I stared at him, this man I'd married, this man who'd stood at an altar and promised to love and support me, who was now asking why I was leaving after his father publicly accused me of sleeping my way to partner. "Are you serious right now?" He glanced at his father, then back at me. "Dad was just joking around. You're being overly sensitive." Overly sensitive. Those words landed like a slap. I grabbed my purse from the back of my chair. "Your father just accused me of prostitution in front of your entire family, and your response is that I'm being overly sensitive. That tells me everything I need to know." William laughed, loud and dismissive. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. Can't take a little ribbing. Probably got that promotion because the men at your firm are too scared to say anything that might offend the delicate lady lawyer. Patricia nodded like he'd made a brilliant point. Women today are so quick to claim they're being attacked. In my day, we had thicker skin. I walked out of that restaurant at 7:43 p.m. on a Friday evening that should have been celebratory, my heels clicking against the marble floor of the lobby while David called after me asking me to come back and not make a scene. I drove to my best friend Samantha's apartment in Lincoln Park, using my key to let myself in because she'd told me years ago I was always welcome. She took one look at my face and pulled out a bottle of wine without asking what happened. I told her everything while sitting on her couch, my voice shaking with anger I'd been holding in since William's comment. Samantha had known the Hartley family for years, had watched them undermine me at every opportunity, and had warned me multiple times that David's failure to stand up to them was a massive red flag I kept ignoring. You need to leave him, she said after I finished. Not as a suggestion, as a statement of fact. I shook my head, still holding on to the idea that this was salvageable, that David would realize how wrong his family's behavior had been once he had time to think about it away from their influence. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from David asking where I was and insisting we needed to talk. I ignored them all and crashed in Samantha's guest room, too exhausted to face my own apartment. The next morning, I drove home at 9:30 to find David sitting at our kitchen table with coffee and his laptop like nothing had happened. He looked up when I came in. Where were you? No apology, no acknowledgement of what his father had said, just irritation that I'd disappeared. I set my purse on the counter. At Samantha's. Where did you think I'd be? He closed his laptop. You embarrassed me last night, walking out like that in front of my family. My mom spent the rest of dinner crying because she thought you were mad at her. I actually laughed, sharp and bitter. Your mother spent dinner crying? Your father accused me of sleeping my way to partner and your mother is the victim here? David stood up, defensive. He was joking. You know how Dad is. He makes inappropriate comments sometimes, but he doesn't mean anything by it. I stared at my husband, really looked at him, and realized I didn't recognize the man standing in front of me. He called me a prostitute, David, in front of your entire family, and you sat there and said nothing. He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. I told him it wasn't appropriate. What else did you want me to do? I wanted you to defend your wife. I wanted you to tell him that I earned my partnership through 9 years of hard work and exceptional performance. I wanted you to shut down his disgusting insinuation immediately, instead of waiting to see if everyone else thought it was funny first. David's face flushed. You're blowing this way out of proportion. My dad was drunk. He says stupid things when he's drunk. Everyone knows that. Nobody actually believes you slept your way to partner. The fact that he was defending his father's drunkenness instead of standing up for me made everything worse. I grabbed a glass from the cabinet and filled it with water, needing to do something with my hands before I threw something. The problem isn't whether people believe it. The problem is that your father felt comfortable saying it out loud at what was supposed to be a celebration of my professional achievement. The problem is that your mother agreed with him. The problem is that your sister thought it was funny enough to record. And the biggest problem is that my husband thinks I'm overreacting to being publicly humiliated by his family. David's voice rose. They're my family, Lindsay. They've known me my entire life. You've known them for 6 years. I'm not going to destroy my relationship with them because you can't take a joke. There it was. The ultimatum I'd been avoiding seeing for years. When push came to shove, David would choose his family over me every single time, no matter how wrong they were, no matter how much they hurt me. I was supposed to smile and take it because they'd known him longer. I set my water glass down very carefully. I need some time to think. I'm going to stay at a hotel for a few days. I packed a bag and checked into a Marriott downtown, a mid-range hotel that felt impersonal and safe. I spent the weekend reviewing my career documentation, pulling up performance reviews and client testimonials and billable hour records, building a case to prove what I already knew. I'd earned my partnership through legitimate work. The compulsion to prove myself felt pathetic even as I was doing it, but I needed to see the evidence laid out in black and white. My first performance review from year 1 described my work as exceptional, particularly in complex securities analysis. My second-year review noted my remarkable ability to build client relationships and deliver results under extreme time pressure. Year 3 mentioned my leadership potential and strategic thinking. Every single review praised my technical skills, my work ethic, my judgment. Not once did anyone mention my appearance or suggest my success came from anything other than professional competence. I had emails from clients praising my work, thanking me for saving deals that seemed impossible, asking specifically for me to handle their future matters. I had evidence of my business development, deals I'd brought to the firm through relationships I'd cultivated at industry conferences and networking events. The documentation was overwhelming and completely irrelevant, because William Hartley had already decided I was a whore, and nothing I showed him would change that opinion. 5. Monday morning, I went into the office at 6:45 a.m., hoping to avoid too many people while I was still processing everything. My assistant, Margaret, a woman in her early 50s who'd been at the firm for 23 years, congratulated me on the partnership as soon as I arrived. She'd baked cookies to celebrate, homemade chocolate chip that she left on my desk with a card signed by the support staff. The genuine warmth of her gesture made me tear up in a way William's cruelty hadn't. I spent the morning reviewing contracts for a merger deal worth $340 million, losing myself in the familiar complexity of acquisition agreements and regulatory compliance. Around 11 o'clock, Richard Kowalski stopped by my office. He was 61 years old, the managing partner who'd been with the firm for 35 years and had shepherded my career from day one. "Lindsay, congratulations again on the partnership. Well deserved." I thanked him and tried to focus on discussing the merger deal, but something in my face must have given away that I was upset. Richard closed my office door and sat down across from my desk. "Is everything okay? You seem off." I debated whether to tell him, whether it was appropriate to bring my personal life into the office, whether complaining about my father-in-law's comments would make me look weak or unprofessional. But Richard had always been supportive, and I trusted him. I told him what William had said, keeping my voice professional and matter-of-fact. Richard's expression went from concern to furious in the space of a sentence. "That's completely unacceptable," he said when I finished. "Lindsay, I want you to understand something. Your partnership was earned through your work product, your client relationships, and your contributions to this firm. The vote was unanimous. Not a single partner expressed even mild hesitation. You're here because you're an exceptional attorney, period." His words helped, but they couldn't erase the fact that my own husband's family believed otherwise. Richard leaned forward. "I've been in this business for 35 years. I've seen plenty of people try to diminish women's accomplishments by suggesting they didn't earn their success. It's sexism, plain and simple. Don't let anyone make you doubt what you've achieved." I thanked him, and he left, but his anger on my behalf stuck with me. A managing partner with decades of experience had immediately recognized William's comment as sexist garbage, yet my own husband had defended it as a joke. That dissonance rattled around in my head for the rest of the day. I worked late, billing 14 hours on the merger deal and 2 smaller matters, not wanting to go back to the hotel and sit alone with my thoughts. Around 9 p.m., my work phone rang with a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered professionally, expecting a client. Instead, I heard William Hartley's voice, slightly slurred from drinking. "Lindsay, it's Bill. We need to talk about what happened Friday." I went very still, my hand tightening around the phone. "How did you get this number?" This was my direct office line, not listed anywhere public. "David gave it to me. Look, Patricia is upset. She thinks you're mad at her. I'm calling to smooth things over." The audacity of it took my breath away. He'd called my work number to tell me his wife was upset, as if that was the problem that needed addressing. "You accused me of sleeping my way to partner in front of your entire family. I am mad. At you." William sighed like I was being difficult. "I was drunk, okay? I say stupid things when I'm drunk. David explained that to you. Can we just move past this? It's causing problems for David at home and he's stressed about it." I stood up from my desk, too angry to sit still. "You're calling me at work to tell me that your son is stressed because I won't pretend you didn't publicly humiliate me?" William's tone shifted, became harder. "I'm calling because you're acting like a child. So I made a joke you didn't like. Adults move on. They don't throw tantrums and run away from dinner." A joke. He was still calling it a joke. "It wasn't a joke, Bill. It was a sexist attack on my professional accomplishments. And the fact that you still don't see the difference tells me everything I need to know about your character." The line went quiet for a moment. Then William's voice came back, ice cold. "You know what your problem is? You think you're better than everyone else. You think that fancy degree and that partnership makes you special. But I've been in business for 40 years and I know how the world works. Women like you don't make partner at prestigious firms without offering something extra. Maybe you believe your own bullshit, but the rest of us see through it." I was shaking now, rage making my voice unsteady. "Women like me? You mean women who work 90-hour weeks and bring in millions in revenue? Women who graduated near the top of their law school class? Women who build their careers through competence instead of connections?" William laughed, harsh and dismissive. "Keep telling yourself that, sweetheart. Meanwhile, everyone at that firm knows exactly what you did to get where you are. They're just too polite to say it to your face." He hung up before I could respond. I stood there in my office at 9:23 p.m., holding my phone and trying not to cry from sheer fury. William had called my work number to double down on his accusation and make it clear he had no intention of apologizing. He'd also revealed something I'd suspected. David had told him where to reach me, had given him my private work number, had enabled this harassment. My husband had chosen his father's comfort over my dignity. I called Samantha and told her about the call. She was quiet for a long moment. "Lindsay, you need to document this. Every interaction with William, every time David defends him. You need a paper trail." I asked why, and she explained she'd been through a difficult divorce 3 years ago and learned the hard way that documentation was everything. I started a file that night, writing down everything William had said at dinner and during the phone call, noting David's responses and lack of support. It felt paranoid and extreme, but Samantha's insistence made me take it seriously. I also changed my office phone to screen calls, making sure William couldn't reach me directly again. The next day, David showed up at my office at 2 o'clock in the afternoon without calling first. Margaret buzzed me to say my husband was there, and I told her to send him in, curious what had prompted the visit. David came in looking stressed, his tie loosened and his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. "We need to talk," he said, closing my office door behind him. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "I'm working. Make it quick." He sat down, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. "My dad called you last night. He told me about the conversation." I leaned back in my chair, keeping my expression neutral. "Did he tell you what he said? Or just his version where I was unreasonable?" David rubbed his face. "He said he tried to apologize and you attacked him, called him a bad person and hung up on him." The lie was so blatant I almost laughed. "That's not what happened. Your father called my work number, which he got from you without my permission, to tell me his wife is upset and I need to get over his joke. When I told him it wasn't a joke, he said I think I'm better than everyone and that everyone at my firm knows I slept my way to partner." David's face flushed. He didn't say that. He wouldn't say that. I picked up my phone and pulled up my call log, showing him William's number and the timestamp. "Want me to call him right now and ask him to repeat what he said? We can put him on speaker." David stood up, agitated. "This is getting out of hand. You're tearing my family apart over something stupid. My mom is crying every day. Caroline is upset. My dad feels attacked. All because you can't let go of one comment he made when he was drunk." I set my phone down carefully. "Your father made that comment sober at dinner. Then he called me drunk to make it worse. This isn't about one comment. This is about a pattern of disrespect and your refusal to stand up for your wife." David's voice rose. "I'm tired of being caught in the middle. You want me to choose between you and my family, and that's not fair." I stood up too, done with this conversation. "You're not in the middle, David. You're on their side. You have been from the beginning. And calling it being in the middle is just a way to avoid admitting you don't support me." He pointed at me, angry now. "You know what? Maybe my dad has a point. Maybe you did sleep your way to partner. Because the Lindsay I married wasn't this cold and vindictive. She would have laughed off a joke instead of turning it into a federal case." The words hit like a punch to the stomach. My own husband was now suggesting I'd prostituted myself for my career. I walked to my office door and opened it. "Get out." David stared at me. "What?" My voice was deadly calm. "Get out of my office. We're done with this conversation." He left, but not before saying he'd be staying at his parents' house until I came to my senses and apologized to his family. I closed my door and sat down at my desk, hands shaking so badly I had to clasp them together. My marriage was falling apart because I wouldn't accept being called a prostitute by my father-in-law. The absurdity of it would have been funny if it wasn't destroying my life. I called a divorce attorney that afternoon. Her name was Jennifer Canton, a partner at a family law firm with 26 years of experience handling high-net-worth divorces. Her assistant scheduled a consultation for the next day. That evening, I sat in my hotel room and made a list of everything I wanted from the divorce: the downtown condo we'd bought together, my own retirement accounts, and half of our joint savings. I didn't want alimony. I didn't want to drag things out. I just wanted to be free of the Hartley family and their toxic dynamics. The consultation with Jennifer lasted 2 hours. She reviewed my timeline of events, took notes on William's harassment and David's lack of support, and asked detailed questions about our finances and assets. "This is a clear case of marital discord stemming from family interference," she said. "Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, so you don't need to prove David did anything wrong. We just need to negotiate a fair settlement." She explained the process: file for dissolution, serve David with papers, exchange financial disclosures, negotiate settlement terms, finalize the divorce. It would take a minimum of 6 months assuming David didn't contest it. I authorized her to begin preparing the paperwork. 3 days later, a process server delivered divorce papers to David at his office. I knew because he called me at 4:37 p.m., screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You filed for divorce, without even talking to me about it?" His voice was raw with shock and anger. I was in my office reviewing a contract, completely calm because I'd known this call was coming. "We've talked about it plenty. You told me to apologize to your family for being upset about your father's harassment. That's not a marriage I want to be in." David's voice cracked. "Lindsay, please, we can work through this. Don't do this." Now he wanted to work through it. After choosing his family repeatedly, after suggesting I might have actually slept my way to partner, after telling me I was vindictive and cold. "It's already done, David. You'll need to get an attorney." He made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "This is insane. You're throwing away 6 years of marriage because of one argument with my dad?" I felt something cold settle in my chest. I'm ending a marriage where my husband allows his father to sexually harass me and then defends it as a joke. There's a difference. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The decision was made. I wasn't trapped anymore. Over the next 2 weeks, David tried everything to change my mind. He sent flowers to my office with apology cards. He showed up at the hotel where I was staying, begging me to talk. He sent emails promising he'd set boundaries with his family. But every time I asked him to acknowledge what his father had said was wrong, He couldn't do it. He'd say things like, "Dad shouldn't have said that," or "The comment was inappropriate," always stopping short of calling it what it was: sexual harassment and defamation. The closest he came was saying his father could have chosen better words. That wasn't good enough. I wanted him to say, "My father sexually harassed you and I should have defended you." He couldn't. His loyalty to William was too deep. Meanwhile, the divorce process moved forward. Jennifer filed the petition citing irreconcilable differences. David hired an attorney, a man named Stuart Phillips, who specialized in protecting assets for wealthy clients. The legal battle I'd hoped to avoid started to materialize when David's first counteroffer arrived, demanding I pay him spousal support and give up my equity stake in the condo. Jennifer called me laughing. "His attorney is trying to position him as the disadvantaged spouse because you make more money now as a partner. It's not going to work, but it shows they're going to fight this." Then something strange happened. 2 weeks after the divorce filing, I got an email from my firm's human resources director, a woman named Beverly Grant with 18 years of HR experience. She wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss a sensitive matter regarding workplace conduct. I called her immediately, confused about what could possibly warrant a formal HR meeting. Beverly was professional but cautious. "I'd prefer to discuss it in person. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" I agreed, spent the rest of the morning distracted and anxious. At 2 o'clock, I sat across from Beverly in her corner office while she pulled out a file folder with my name on it. "Lindsay, we've received a complaint about you. An anonymous complaint alleging inappropriate relationships with senior partners at the firm." My stomach dropped. "What?" Beverly looked uncomfortable. "The complaint alleges you've been having affairs with multiple partners at the firm and that your partnership was granted as a result of these relationships rather than your professional qualifications." William. It had to be William. He'd called my firm and made an anonymous complaint trying to destroy my career. Beverly continued, "I want to be clear that we take these allegations seriously and are required to investigate. However, I also want you to know that managing partner Kowalski has complete faith in your professional conduct and believes this complaint is malicious." I felt like I couldn't breathe. William was trying to get me fired, to destroy the career I'd built, to prove his accusations were true by forcing the firm to investigate me. Beverly handed me a copy of the complaint. It was typed, single-spaced, 2 pages long. It claimed I'd had sexual relationships with Richard Kowalski and 2 other senior partners. It described specific instances: staying late at the office with Richard, attending client dinners alone with the other partners, taking business trips that the complaint suggested were actually romantic getaways. Every single allegation was based on normal business activities twisted to look suspicious. The late nights with Richard had been working on a major deal. The client dinners were standard business development. The business trips were legitimate travel for client meetings. But presented this way, through the lens of suspicion, everything looked damning. I looked up at Beverly. "None of this is true. These were all professional interactions." She nodded. "I believe you, but I still have to investigate. I'll need to interview you formally, interview the partners named in the complaint, and review any relevant documentation. The process will take approximately 2 weeks." I left Beverly's office at 3:15 feeling like my world was collapsing. My marriage was ending, my father-in-law was harassing me, and now my professional reputation was under attack. I went back to my office, closed the door, and called Jennifer Canton. William Hartley filed a false complaint with my firm's HR department accusing me of sleeping with partners. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "That's defamation, and possibly tortious interference with employment. We can sue him." I asked what I needed to prove, and she explained I'd need evidence that William made the complaint, and that he did so with actual malice. The anonymous nature of the complaint made it harder, but not impossible. She suggested I hire a private investigator to gather evidence of William's campaign against me. She gave me a name, Robert Hayes, a former detective with 23 years of experience who now ran a private investigation firm specializing in defamation cases. I called Robert that evening and explained the situation. He agreed to take the case and started by requesting phone records and email logs to track William's communications. Over the next week, Robert uncovered a pattern that was both vindictive and stupid. William had called my firm's main number 3 times before finally reaching HR. The calls were logged in the company phone system with timestamps. He'd also sent emails to my firm from a Proton Mail account he'd created specifically for this purpose, but he'd been careless enough to access it from his home IP address. Robert traced the IP back to William's house in Lake Forest. The evidence was solid. Meanwhile, Beverly's investigation proceeded. She interviewed me for 3 hours, asking detailed questions about every interaction with the partners named in the complaint. I provided my calendar showing the business purposes of every meeting, every dinner, every trip. I provided emails and work product proving the professional nature of all my relationships. She interviewed Richard Kowalski next, and he was apparently furious about the allegations, calling them a transparent attempt to undermine an exceptional attorney. The other 2 partners gave similar statements. Beverly also reviewed security badge logs showing when I entered and left the building, proving that my late nights at the office were just that: work. After 10 days, Beverly called me back to her office. "The investigation is complete. We found no evidence supporting any of the allegations. Your professional conduct has been exemplary. The complaint appears to be malicious and fabricated. I felt relief flood through me, followed immediately by anger. Can you tell me who filed the complaint? Beverly shook her head. It was anonymous. We have no way to track who submitted it. I smiled. I do. I hired a private investigator. William Hartley, my father-in-law, filed it. I have phone records and IP logs proving it. Beverly's eyes widened. That's extremely serious. That's defamation and potentially criminal harassment. I gave Beverly copies of Robert's findings. She reviewed them carefully, then made a call to the firm's general counsel, a senior partner named Douglas Bennett who'd been with the firm for 30 years. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in a conference room with Beverly, Douglas, and Richard Kowalski while Douglas reviewed the evidence. This is actionable, Douglas said. William Hartley filed a knowingly false complaint to damage your professional reputation. We can sue him for defamation and tortious interference. The firm can also sue him for abuse of our HR complaint system. Richard looked at me. Lindsay, what do you want to do? We'll support whatever decision you make, but I want you to know you have the full backing of this firm. I thought about William's smirk at that dinner, his phone call to my office, his suggestion that everyone at the firm knew I'd slept my way to partner. I thought about David's refusal to defend me, his insistence that I was overreacting. I thought about the stress of the HR investigation, the sleepless nights wondering if my career was over. I want to sue him, I said. I want everyone to know what he did. Douglas nodded. We'll file suit on your behalf. Defamation, tortious interference, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We'll also seek punitive damages given the malicious nature of his conduct. The lawsuit was filed in Cook County Circuit Court 3 days later. The complaint was detailed and damning, laying out William's initial accusation at dinner, his harassing phone call to my office, and his anonymous complaint to my firm. It included the phone records showing his calls to Sterling and Associates, the IP logs connecting him to the fake email account, and statements from Beverly and the partners confirming the complaint was false. It sought $850,000 in damages, $350,000 for harm to professional reputation, $250,000 for emotional distress, and $250,000 in punitive damages. The Chicago Tribune picked up the story 2 days later. The headline read, Law firm partner sues father-in-law for defamation after false sexual harassment complaint. The article detailed William's accusations and the evidence proving he'd filed the false HR complaint. It mentioned that I'd made partner based on unanimous vote and exceptional performance. It noted that William owned a commercial real estate development company and had no connection to Sterling and Associates. The story went viral. Legal blogs picked it up. Reddit threads discussed it. Twitter lawyers debated the merits of the case. Suddenly, my private humiliation was public knowledge. But the publicity cut both ways. It also meant everyone knew William had lied, that he'd tried to destroy my career out of spite, that his initial accusation at dinner had been baseless sexism. David called me the day the lawsuit was filed, angrier than I'd ever heard him. You sued my father? Are you insane? I was in my office, door closed, ready for this confrontation. Your father filed a false complaint with my employer trying to get me fired. Yes, I sued him. David's voice shook. He's my dad. You're destroying my family over a stupid comment he made. I felt my jaw clench. He tried to destroy my career with false accusations of sexual misconduct. This isn't about a comment anymore. This is about him committing actionable defamation and tortious interference. David made a sound of frustration. You've changed. The woman I married wouldn't do this. She wouldn't tear apart a family. I laughed, sharp and bitter. The woman you married had to change to survive your family's abuse, and I'm not tearing anything apart. Your father did that when he decided my professional success must mean I'm a prostitute. David hung up. I sat there feeling oddly calm. The marriage was over. The lawsuit was filed. Everything was out in the open now. No more pretending, no more trying to smooth things over. Just truth and consequences. Over the next month, William's attorney, a lawyer named Gregory Fleming with 20 years of litigation experience, filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit. The motion argued that William's initial comment at dinner was protected opinion and that there was insufficient evidence he'd filed the HR complaint. It was a weak argument, and our response brief demolished it. We had phone records, IP logs, and the timeline of William's escalating harassment. The judge, Honorable Patricia Vance with 19 years on the bench, denied the motion to dismiss and scheduled the case for trial in 6 months. Discovery began immediately. We subpoenaed William's phone records, emails, and financial documents. His attorney resisted, filing objections to nearly every request, but Judge Vance sided with us on most issues. What we found during discovery was even worse than I'd expected. William had been researching me obsessively since my partnership announcement. His browser history showed dozens of searches for my name combined with terms like law firm scandal and attorney misconduct. He'd joined an online forum where men discussed women in professional settings, posting anonymously about female lawyers who sleep their way up and asking for advice on how to expose professional misconduct. He'd saved articles about other high-profile defamation cases, apparently looking for tactics he could use. The digital trail was extensive and damning. It showed premeditation, malice, and a systematic campaign to destroy my reputation. William's deposition was scheduled for early March, 3 months after filing the lawsuit. I attended, sitting next to my attorneys while William sat across the conference table with Gregory Fleming. The court reporter swore William in, and Douglas Bennett began asking questions. William looked older than he had at that dinner, his face drawn and his expensive suit hanging looser on his frame. The stress of the lawsuit was taking its toll. Douglas started with basic questions about William's relationship with David and me, establishing the family connection. Then he moved to the dinner. Mr. Hartley, at the dinner on the evening of Friday, January 18th, did you say to Mrs. Lindsay Hartley, "Did you sleep your way to the top?" William's attorney objected, claiming the question was argumentative. Judge Vance had already ruled this deposition could proceed, so Douglas repeated the question. William shifted in his seat. "I may have said something like that. I don't remember exactly." Douglas pulled out a transcript of Caroline's video. She'd posted it to Instagram that night before thinking better of it and deleting it, but Robert Hayes had recovered it. The transcript showed William's exact words. "Mr. Hartley, this transcript shows you said, and I quote, 'a young woman making partner that quickly? At a firm full of men? We know how the world really works.' Then later, 'No shame in it, darling. You played the game smart.' Do you recall making these statements?" William's face flushed. "If that's what the transcript says." Douglas moved to the phone call. 3 days after the dinner, did you call Mrs. Hartley at her work number?" William nodded. "I called to apologize." Douglas pulled out the phone records. "These records show a call from your cell phone to Mrs. Hartley's work number lasting 9 minutes. What did you say during that call?" William looked at his attorney, who nodded slightly. "I told her she was overreacting, that it was just a joke." Douglas leaned forward. "Did you also tell her, 'Everyone at that firm knows exactly what you did to get where you are'?" William hesitated. "I might have said something like that." The deposition continued for 6 hours. Douglas walked William through every detail: the timing of his calls to Sterling and Associates, his creation of the Proton Mail account, his anonymous complaint. William tried to deny making the complaint, claiming someone must have used his IP address without his knowledge. Douglas presented evidence that William lived alone, that no one else had access to his home computer. William's story fell apart under questioning. By the end, it was clear he'd filed the complaint and that he'd done so knowing the allegations were false. The deposition transcript would be devastating at trial. But we didn't go to trial. 2 weeks after William's deposition, Gregory Fleming called Douglas to discuss settlement. William wanted to settle for $200,000 and a confidential agreement. Douglas laughed and countered at $750,000 with a public apology. They negotiated for another week before settling at $600,000 plus a public statement. The statement, which William was required to publish in the Chicago Tribune, read, "I, William Hartley, acknowledge that I made false and defamatory statements about my daughter-in-law, attorney Lindsay Hartley. I falsely accused her of achieving her partnership through inappropriate relationships rather than professional merit. These accusations were completely untrue and were made with malicious intent to harm her reputation. I filed a false complaint with her employer containing fabricated allegations. I deeply regret my actions and apologize to Miss Hartley, to Sterling and Associates, and to everyone affected by my conduct. Miss Hartley's partnership was earned through her exceptional legal skills, work ethic, and professional accomplishments." The statement ran in the Tribune on April 15th. The settlement payment cleared into my account 3 days later. I donated $400,000 to organizations supporting women in law and kept the remaining $200,000 for legal fees and taxes. The vindication felt hollow in some ways because William's apology was coerced, not genuine. But it was public and permanent. Anyone who Googled my name would find not just the initial accusation, but also the settlement and admission that he'd lied. My professional reputation was restored. The divorce from David finalized 2 months later. He'd contested it initially, demanding spousal support and half the condo, but his position weakened considerably after the settlement with William. His own father's admission of defamation made it hard to argue I was the vindictive one. We settled with me keeping the condo and my retirement accounts, David keeping his accounts, and splitting our joint savings evenly. No alimony for either party. Clean break. I signed the final divorce decree on June 22nd in Judge Vance's courtroom. David wasn't there. His attorney signed on his behalf. Just like that, 6 years of marriage dissolved into a court order and property division. I felt relief more than sadness. I'd spent so much energy trying to make that relationship work, trying to earn the Hartley family's respect, trying to convince David to prioritize our marriage over his parents' dysfunction. I was done trying, done compromising, done accepting less than I deserved. 3 months after the settlement, Sterling and Associates held a formal ceremony to celebrate new partners. I stood on a stage in the firm's largest conference room while Richard Kowalski presented me with a plaque commemorating my partnership. The entire firm attended, over 200 attorneys and staff. Richard gave a speech about my accomplishments, my integrity, and my resilience. He specifically mentioned the false allegations and how I'd handled them with grace and strength. "Lindsay Hartley represents the best of what this firm stands for," he said. "Excellence in legal practice, unwavering ethics, and courage in the face of adversity. We're honored to have her as our partner." The room erupted in applause. Margaret was crying. Samantha, who I'd invited as my guest, was beaming. I looked out at all those faces, colleagues who'd supported me through the investigation, who'd provided statements defending my character, who'd never doubted my professional integrity. This was my real family. These people who valued my work and respected my achievements. Not the Hartleys with their sexism and their willingness to destroy me rather than admit they were wrong. After the ceremony, Richard pulled me aside. I heard from William Hartley's attorney yesterday. William's business is in serious trouble. Several of his major clients terminated contracts after the Tribune published his apology. He's facing financial difficulties. I felt no satisfaction in that news, just a weary sort of justice. William had tried to destroy my career and ended up damaging his own. That wasn't my doing. That was consequence. 1 year after that dinner at Mercado, I was sitting in my office reviewing documents for a $680 million merger when my phone rang with a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Lindsay Hartley, a woman's voice, nervous and young. Miss Hartley? My name is Rebecca Travers. I'm a third-year associate at Whitman & Gray. I'm calling because I'm going through something similar to what you experienced, and I was hoping you might have advice. She explained that her managing partner had been making inappropriate comments about her appearance and suggesting her success was due to her looks rather than her work. She'd filed an HR complaint and was now facing retaliation. She'd read about my case and wondered if I'd be willing to talk to her about how I'd handled it. I scheduled a meeting with Rebecca for the following week. She came to my office, a woman in her late 20s with dark circles under her eyes and a portfolio full of evidence documenting the harassment. I spent 2 hours walking her through the process, documenting everything, finding an attorney who specialized in employment law, preparing for the emotional toll of fighting back. I gave her Jennifer Canton's contact information and offered to be a reference if she needed one. Rebecca left looking more hopeful than when she'd arrived. Over the next year, 5 more women reached out to me with similar stories: harassment, defamation, retaliation. I helped each one, connecting them with resources, sharing my experience, offering support. I realized my case had become a roadmap for other women facing the same battles. That felt meaningful in a way the settlement money never had. 2 years after my partnership, Sterling & Associates elected me to the firm's management committee, making me one of 7 partners who set firm strategy and policy. I pushed for stronger anti-harassment protocols, mandatory training for all attorneys, and better support systems for associates facing difficult situations. The firm implemented every recommendation. I also started speaking at law schools and professional conferences about the intersection of sexism and defamation in professional settings. My story resonated with women across industries who'd faced similar accusations: that their success must be due to sex rather than competence, that they'd slept their way to the top, that their achievements were somehow illegitimate. The pattern was depressingly common, but so was the resilience of women who fought back and won. I ran into David once, 3 years after our divorce. I was at a coffee shop near the courthouse grabbing a latte before a hearing when I saw him in line ahead of me. He'd lost weight, looked tired. He turned and our eyes met. There was a moment of awkward recognition before he approached. "Lindsay, hi." I nodded. "David." He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. "I saw you won that big pharmaceutical merger last month. Congratulations." I thanked him and ordered my coffee. He lingered near the pickup counter. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for how everything went down. You were right about my family." The apology came 3 years too late to matter. I collected my latte. "I appreciate you saying that." He looked like he wanted to say more, but I walked away before he could. That chapter of my life was closed. I had no interest in reopening it. 5 years after making partner, I was named head of Sterling & Associates Mergers and Acquisitions Practice Group, leading a team of 32 attorneys handling deals across the United States and internationally. My annual compensation exceeded $2 million. I'd built the career I'd always wanted, not by sleeping my way anywhere, but by working harder and smarter than almost everyone around me. The vindication wasn't in William Hartley's coerced apology or the settlement payment. It was in every deal I closed, every client who specifically requested me, every young attorney who told me I inspired them. I proved what I'd always known. My success was earned, legitimate, and based on nothing but my own competence and dedication. William Hartley tried to destroy that truth and failed. His lie lasted maybe 3 months before evidence and reality crushed it. My achievement will last my entire career. That's the difference between defamation and fact. Lies collapse under scrutiny. Truth withstands any attack. I learned that lesson in the hardest way possible, but I learned it completely. And now I use it to help other women whose truths are being attacked by people who can't accept that women can be brilliant, accomplished, and successful without owing that success to men. We can. We do. And we'll keep doing it regardless of who tries to diminish what we've earned. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.